Haz tu problema.
Look at that.
Wow.
Delmo.
Welcome back. Episode 10, Over to Cap. Mike Val here. This is going to be a little bit of a informative episode tonight. We're not going to have Johnny with us tonight, and there will be no rants about anything tonight, I promise. But we do have a guest that I'm very excited to finally meet for the first time. And without any further ado, here's his little intro here. 2016 inducted to the USBC Hall of Fame. He is a two-time member of Team USA, a three-time collegiate national champion. My Morehead State alumnus will be upset that I'm wearing the Wichita State colors, but I'm doing it just for him. Two-time Eagle winner at the USBCs. This guy he's a bowling genius. So let's bring on Coach K, not Mike Krzyzewski, but Steve Klumpkin.
Hey, Mike,
So,
thank you.
No problem. So my Morehead State alumnus will be really ticked off at me that I'm not in the blue and yellow, but I'm in the black and yellow tonight.
Yes.
It was either going with the Team USA, like the Stars and Stripes, but I figured, no, to give you a little more respect, I put the Wichita colors on for you tonight.
Thank you. And the PBA tour is in Wichita right now. Actually, they just had the PTQ today. So
They did, and I got the number was 97 over was the number today.
Yep, 97. They looked like they got tricky. They started out, seemed like kind of high scoring, then they looked like transition kind of got. And I felt bad for Zeke Bate, man. He missed by a stick, and man, he's been right there, but just missing by just nips,
He's a great player. I like his game.
Yeah, very talented, very versatile.
Yeah.
And
he loves Bayside up in Maine. That's where I think we got to know him, was in Bayside.
Yeah. Good dude. We're definitely rooting for him, and missing by a pin is. That's tough. Have you watched Full Swing at all? Have you watched that new documentary on
Not
Netflix?
Yet. That is on the agenda to watch. So yes.
Yeah, they had a couple of good episodes on there, and the one of the guys walked off and he missed the cut by one stroke, and he said, "Man, I'd rather miss by 5 strokes than one." Because you go back and pick up the same kind of thing I was thinking for PTQ.
We've all been in that situation where you missed a cut by a pin or missed a check by a pin or whatnot.
Exactly.
So what I'd like to do before we get into the equipment talk tonight, I want to go into a little bit about your career. And you bowled in the pinnacle of bowling. And this is how I think we got connected. When John and I talked about our collegiate Hall of Famers, you were first ballot, should be on the first ballot for the Collegiate Hall of Fame from the USBC. But
you
also bowled. Oh, it's a fact.
Yeah.
But you also bowled in that mega buck era. That was the highest of level of bowling, right?
Yeah.
So
it was.
You have to have a couple good stories that are able to be shared.
Yeah. No, I definitely do. I mean, I can kind of give you a little start. I mean, my first job was working at the Showboat when I was 16 years old. So I started working there in 1986, and they had just installed the automatic scoring. They'd only had it there for a couple of years, so a lot of the league bowlers didn't know how to operate it, right? So they had scoring attendants, and that was my first job, which was to go down and run and help set up people's names and all that stuff. And part of it, that's how I got into the high roller, because it hosted the high roller there. Mm-hmm. So starting back, it was 1988, and I don't know if you've had Litchie on the show or not, Mike Lickstein.
Larry,
but
not Mike. We have a Larry.
Yeah, well, 2 great characters, right? And unbelievable.
Yes.
Like there's something else. So anyway, Litchie, little Litchie, Mike, had actually won. I was working at the Showboat there when he won. I was working in the pro shop. I had moved from the lanes to the pro shop, and we had a little kiosk set out. There were so many bowlers, and of course the low side, or it was 1 through 70. Then there was a high side, which got up to lanes 106.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the biggest bowling center in the country. And it was so hard, and there were so many people with the stands and everything set up that if you were on either the high end of the low side, or if you're on the high side, it was hard to get down to the pro shop, which you might remember was behind lanes 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So we had actually set up a temporary pro shop, and that was my job during the high roller, was to man the pro shop to sell new skin and rosin bags and towels and stuff like that. And we had a little temporary kiosk set up behind like lanes 59 and 60. And that was right where the championship pair was that they had for the PBA tour stops, national stops. And that's where the high roller was. So I was actually there working at the showboat when Litchie won. And I saw that, of course, all the prestige and, of course, all the money. I mean, $200,000. And, you factor that into what's $200,000 back then in today's money, makes it even more incredible, for how much it was. So anyways, I actually quit working the showboat because they had a rule that you couldn't bowl in the high roller if you were a showboat employee. So I went and worked at Sam's Town down the street. I got a job in the pro shop there working for Dave Wadka's mom, Kathy Wadka. She hired me down there when they had an opening, and I went down there, and then I was able to bowl in what was then the American Dream Classic, which was a mega buck that was held at Sam's Town, and then also bowl in the high roller. So that's kind of how I got started there.
And for people that don't know what the high roller was, and I got to use it in past tense, wasn't it $1,000 to enter? Was it $1,000 entry fee?
It was $1,000. Yeah, I got up to 1,100 at one point, but it was $1,000 when I first started bowling it. And it was a one game. You'd sign up for the squad that you wanted. They had squad times between 9 and 2 every hour on the hour, 2 days in a row. And I mean, they had 1,500 to 1,800 entries or so. And you would sign up for whatever squad you wanted, and then an hour before you would draw lanes, and you would pick up. And whoever you drew, 1 year I drew Chris Barnes. Whoever you drew, and that's who you had to bowl against. Yeah. And you lose, you go home. There was no re-entry or no, it was just you put up $1,000, and you had to win 2 matches to get your money back. And but yeah, it was some serious high pressure, intense bowling like you just can't even. It's even hard to imagine today.
Today, it's like you would never see that today.
You'd never see it today. I know. I was fortunate to be around then. And
you competed against those. And this is the question that I always asked myself, and I've never asked this to anybody else. So like you bowled with Barnes in that era, right? So Barnes.
That's right.
Robert Smith. And my personal favorite, Mike Newman, right? Rudy.
Yes.
All those guys.
Yes.
So did you guys have more talent than tour guys? I mean, you guys were really, really talented. Like if you were to put up like a team challenge team, we'll talk about team challenge in a second. Like you were top 5 amateurs against the top 5 guys on tour. Could you have competed against them, you think?
That's a great question. I think it's tough to say because the guys on tour is those guys legendary back then too, whether you're talking, the guys that were on the shows every week from Walter Ray Williams and Leto Monticelli. And these guys, they were, Del Ballard, Pete Weber, Norm Duke. It's hard to say that we could take them on. But the one thing that was different, I think, was the mindset, that was created. And there was such a different mindset, between the PBA Tour, which was a marathon, versus the high roller, which was a sprint. It was a game, or the sweepers, which is where all the money was at too, was a 2-game total. So you had to be able to, kind of hit the gas quick and strike in a short amount of time. There was no kind of pacing yourself and strategic wise. And it was just a completely such a different format. But, you look at the talent from the guys that went out, Robert Smith and Chris Barnes and these guys, Tommy Jones. They had Hall of Fame. These are Hall of Famers on the PBA Tour as well. So,
and the name that I mentioned that nobody really knows of, unless you're a bowling junkie like I am, or you, no offense, is Newman. And
I know.
Newman,
hey, you guys! I heard you guys. I watched your podcast with you and JP. It was. I'm 100% with you. He is my number 1 all-time best bowler that I've seen in person. Witness the best bowling I've ever seen in my life was Mike Newman.
And people don't realize or who he is, right? But he almost looked like he did everything wrong, but he did everything right. If that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll give you a good example of that because at the time, you look at Mike Newman, and I've always been sort of a student of the game, and as far as analyzing technique and all that stuff. And what he was doing at the time, when you watch it, and he did it with his thumb in the ball, of course, but if you watch, and what I always kind of like to look at is their walk pattern and their feet. And he had always his first 2 steps and third step walk way left and out of the shot as his shoulders rotated and opened up, and then kind of slid sort of back into the shot. If you watch any two-hander today or any power player today, back at that time when Mike was doing it, everybody was taught to walk straight. Like you weren't supposed to take kind of sort of a U-shaped path on the approach. And he was way ahead of his time on that. And in fact, I can't probably like the amount of people that told Belmo that he was bowling wrong, by not using his thumb, probably told Mike the same thing, that his game, like, oh, you need to walk straighter. You need to keep your shoulders square. And he was one of the first guys that had extreme drop with his right shoulder, massive open of, hips, and his walk and his projection and launch. And the Showboat, that place hooked, especially hooked in the heads, and hooked early. Hooked a lot. So it sort of played into, sort of what he was kind of built for. And I'm sure what he had trained and practiced for a lot too, because he had said a couple of different times that was his favorite bowling center in the country.
Yeah. And he was Team USA. He was on Team USA for a while. And
he did. Yeah.
But he was, I would have loved to see if he would have went on tour, if he would have been successful. I think he probably would have been. I think he would have been. He was that talented.
Yes.
But he made a urethane ball look like the Excalibur before the Excalibur came out, right? He did resin things to a urethane ball that nobody ever saw before, except maybe for Rudy. Rudy was kind of like that, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yep, he was. Yeah, Revs was like that in terms of being able to shape a urethane where he could play deeper in where everybody else was playing. He could then use that as sort of the track, that he would shape it in and off of that. But if anybody moved in to try to play sort of where he was at, nobody had enough hand revolutions and such to get the ball back.
So is it fair to say that when Johnny and I talked about it, that Mike was probably the most accomplished amateur that ever walked the face of the earth?
I think the most talented, and I think, you could say accomplished too, because he won 3 megabuck titles. He won the Super Hoinky, he won the high roller, the Super Bowl high roller. He won 4 Eagles in 1 year.
That's incredible,
right? Which is absolutely incredible.
That record
he also
won
the mini. He also won the mini eliminator. Yeah, I think he tied the record. I think maybe Neil Burton or somebody else, Bo Burton maybe had won. I think 4. One of them had 4 in a year, and one of them had had 9 Eagles, and I think that's the record in total, which is crazy to think.
Bo has 9. I interviewed Bo maybe last year. He said he had 9, which is
that's great. Wow.
But amazing. 9 over, and he did it back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And Bo said his claim to fame was, well, we did it on a flat 1-to-1. Like there was no, they were walled up. No, he did it with rubber, but 9 Eagles in the career, like 9 Eagles, and he won the Masters.
Amazing, right? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The only one really modern times, I think, right now that has sort of a chance. It's tough to say a chance at catching it, but he's young enough that he can do it. Matt McNeil.
Yeah.
He's got 5 of them now. Think
Incredible.
about that. It is so incredible. It's amazing that he is where he's at.
So since we're talking about Eagles, so you have 2 Eagles.
Yeah.
Is it harder, or was it harder to win an Eagle than it is to win or a megabuck title? Like, is the Eagle the hardest thing in the amateur ranks? Or was it the hardest thing?
I think numbers wise, I won fortunate enough to win the all events in Knoxville, and that year they had there was 65,000 bowlers, so I would say numbers wise, it's probably especially when you're looking at all events, that's incredibly tough. Now I was lucky enough to finish. I never won a megabuck title. I got 2 seconds. You were asking as far as some good stories go, and I was actually talking to one of my buddies today. And he has not digitized it yet, but I literally just mentioned to him today. He has on an old camcorder, VHS camcorder, a copy of the stepladder finals of the 1990 American Dream Classic when I finished second. I finished second to Derek Banks.
Okay.
And that was at Samstown. And Derek Banks, for $132,000 for first, he had the front 8 that he bowled in the championship match against me. And there is a copy of this. As soon as I get it digitized, I'll upload it and we'll get it shared. People can watch it.
Okay.
But, yeah.
I never even heard of that tournament. That's the kind of like one that was brushed under the rug, it seems like.
Yeah, it was the one. It actually had started. I believe it started the year before the high roller. It was out of Chicago. There was a guy named Buddy Finkelberg, and he was the tournament manager of it. It went to Samstown in the mid '80s, and it had paid at one point $250,000 for first. But the same year, I remember one year, I think it was Rick Pollard had finished second in it. He's a USBC Hall of Famer, great player from the Hoink. Rick Pollard finished third in it for $10,000. So it paid $250 and $100 guaranteed, and then third was 10.
Nice drop.
You know, so a huge drop. But it was a similar type of a format, except it was a double elimination. But that actually went on at Samstown kind of in around the same time as the high roller had brought out the Super Bowl high roller, because they had just the summer high roller for a while. Then they brought out the Super Bowl high roller, and they were running those events twice a year over at the Showboat. In Samstown, the American Dream Classic had lasted probably through the mid '90s, and when that went away, it was the mini eliminator had kind of jumped in over it. That was over at Samstown, and Steve got that started up over there, Steve Sanders, and then that ended up moving over to the Orleans and still had a mega buck field, but then it paid $50,000 for first, and then $30,000, and kind of that big 6-digit prize, for first had dropped off from what we had available for us for a while, especially if you throw in the Super Hoinky in Cincinnati.
Oh, I never bowled the Super. My first high roller was 04, and that was the last year they did the match play, but they offered insurance. So it was like if you lost your match, you could buy insurance for $100 before you bowled your match, and you could basically you was like. With insurance, you could come back to the round too. But that wasn't it wasn't the same, I guess, feel. And I'm younger enough, but I never bowled when you guys did. And the older guys over there, I remember the first year I bowled, I drew Paul Renteria in my first round.
Nice draw.
Nice draw, yeah. And it was a fantastic draw. And we were basically dead even, maybe like a pin or two difference up through 5. And he made a ball change and threw the back 7, so it sent me packing. And he was saying, well, did you buy the insurance? I said, I didn't even know about it. And he was explaining it. He goes, but years ago, and then he was telling me how, even though it was still really good then, it was $75,000 in 2004. It was nowhere close to what it was when he won it. He won it twice.
Yeah, twice for $200,000. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God, he was a great. Watching him live. Oh my God. Yeah. And he was so nice, but when he looked at you off the approach, like he wanted to rip your throat out. That's how intense this guy was on the lanes.
Super intense. Yeah, he was. And quite a feat. I mean, to win 2 high rollers, $400,000 in 2 tournaments.
Did Litchie win it twice? Litchie won it in Vegas. Did he win another one?
He won that. He won one in the Atlantic City.
That's one.
They had the Atlantic City at the Showboat in Atlantic City. They had one there, and I don't know what it paid. It was a lot smaller. But it was still the same kind of and you still had to win, 10 or 11 matches in a row. I mean, it was still, super, super hard to win.
And it was a miracle if you
those, win or go home.
Yeah. And a miracle if you caught the bye one round. That was the dream. If you caught the bye, probably.
Oh, yes, it was. Yeah. They had some big money buys. The year I finished second, I caught one of the buys to get into the top 16, and it was a $2,000 buy. It went from 3,000 up to 5,000 if you got that buy.
Thank you very much.
Exactly. And there's always luck involved, Dame.
How about one more? I bet the team challenge days. Those are those days are gone.
Yeah, those were great. Super, super demanding, difficult lane conditions at all times. But I think everybody liked the challenge of it, the competition. It was cool because you also, if you made the show, top 3 teams got to bowl on TV. So there was, I think it was on Prime Networks at the time. Yeah. So you get to actually get like a real, competitive TV experience. It would get shown nationally, and you get a chance to bowl on TV. And that was one of the huge draws. And there was a lot of good money in it as well too. And it made it worthwhile for people to, they get their best, either local entries or, the thing that we had from the high roller is like, I was good friends with Chris Barnes and Pat Healy and, John Gaines and these guys that I bowled with. So I got to bowl quite a few team challenges. And I think we ended up making 11 shows that I ended up bowling on there. But it was all, we were the same kind of group of guys from the high rollers and stuff. So you get a lot of, pretty powerful teams that would kind of come together, and it wasn't necessarily a stacked team where you're just trying to find people that didn't know. You're just bowling with your best buddies that you were used to kind of competing around the year on. So
was there I know there was a rule like with the tour guys, but did they have a rule like with amateur, like the Team USA, like where you couldn't stack the team that much, or was it just open 5 guys and go have at it?
It was, I don't remember what year it was open until, but it was open until like 99 or something like that.
Wow.
All throughout the 90s, it was, you could just put together your best ones. I think then maybe they lost some entries, some of the local entries that they used to get. So they made some modifications to the rules where you had to have, 2 or 3 people all from the same bowling association, or they started making some rules. Like they could only have certain, number of people on Team USA, like you said, that would maybe be able to compete. So it did break up some of those, more kind of high-powered teams, so to speak. But it was the lanes were hard, same kind of kind of thing. I mean, they were difficult,
And I remember I talked to Robert. I'm pretty good friends with Robert, and he would say like a good bracket session would be like 180, 180, 180 across the board. He goes, if you bowl 180 across the board, you were walking out with thousands of dollars in brackets, because that's how hard they were.
Yeah, they definitely were. They depended on the places where you're at. You would see, it would be, and even if you go back and watch some of those telecasts, I like watching those on YouTube. You go back and find some of the old American Bowling Congress, World Team Challenge shows and stuff, and you'll see qualifying average 191, qualifying average 203, maybe. And these are the teams that made the telecast. You know what I mean? So yeah, if you as a team could average 190. You'd make the top 10 for Sunday, and then it was Baker format, which is also cool because a lot of times you don't get a chance to bowl Baker outside of college bowling.
And you would always see Newman on those team challenge shows. Getting back to him again,
yeah.
And I remember there was one that stuck out. I think it was like the Grand Championship in Reno one year, not in the stadium, at the Hilton.
At the Hilton, yes,
yeah. And they looked like they were impossibly hard, super tight. Nobody could wrinkle them. And here's Newman just going coast to coast. Like, again, what he did with a bowling ball was incredible.
Yes. But, yeah. He was super, super talented. I hope to see him again one day. Sit down and have a coffee with him or something,
All right. Enough about Newman, because I could go on for an hour about Mike Newman.
Right? I know. I can too. I'm a fan.
I want to learn something tonight. So I've been bowling for 35 years. And up until last year, I finally learned, thanks to Janowitz, how to read a lane graph the proper way. Okay?
Nice. You learn from the best. You learn from the best.
He is a genius.
Yeah.
And I put you in John's level of being a genius in this sport on the technology side with the bowling balls, right? So I would love to start when we talk about equipment. So we're going to talk about the new releases that Storm has. So you have a bunch of new stuff coming out. They just released coming out in a couple weeks. Yep. But let's start with something simple. So I'm looking at the specs for the Absolute, right? Yeah. Just came out, 2 weeks ago, about a month ago, right? A couple weeks ago.
Just announced it, but
So when we look at a bowling ball, right? So 15 pounds, looking at the radius, 2.48, differentials 0.50, PSAs 0.021. What does all that stuff mean? And how does that affect, like, my local guy or, Joe Bowler wants to go buy a bowling ball, and, well, it's a low diff or a high diff. And what does all that mean? And how do you, make that work to your game? Because I have no clue, and I want to learn this.
Yeah, no, good question. And a lot of people want to know. And we did a lot of seminars over the years, helping train and educate the pro shop operators. So I was lucky enough to get to travel around, and, I learned about this stuff at Storm as well. I mean, I had some knowledge of bowling and layouts and that stuff when I came here. But a lot of the stuff I learned while here at Storm.
Okay.
And, you look at RG, I try to classify it as this and try to make it as simple as possible. And it really is kind of simple once you do understand it. As far as RG, you can look at it as a length potential. It's the lower the number, the faster the ball will rev up. So it's a lower center of gravity. So the example a lot of times you'd look at would be like a figure skater. So you take a figure skater and you see when she or he, when they're out on the ice and they move their arms out, they're spinning slow. And as they move their arms in tight, they spin really fast. So this is a low RG right now with my arms in tight, spinning fast. And this is a high RG. So the lower the RG, the earlier or sooner that ball is going to rev up and read in the mid lane. So it's kind of sort of a length potential when you're looking only at the core. So that's going to provide the earliest break point of them all. It'd be your strongest, your most, what's going to give you the most potential to create some shape and motion.
So like your big ASIM would be something like that you're talking about.
Typically, but it can also be symmetrical. If you look at the core design on, let's say like the roto grip on the new TNT, for example, that one has anything in the 2.4 range. We have 2.46 is the lowest we can go as far as specs go. But anything between 246 and 249, you could say is a low RG, and it can be symmetrical. But a lot of times, yes, you would typically see that in your ASIMs. If you're looking at a reality, or a new eternity, or you're looking at a gem is extremely low. Gems and exotic gems on roto grip side are both very low RG. So that's for something that's you want it to rev up and read the mid lane. So it's going to lose its axis rotation the quickest. So it's going to stop skidding and start to create some shape sooner. So for more performance, that's kind of what I look at. And the easiest way to describe it is you have like a length potential, which would be the RG, and then you have differential, which is a hook potential. So if you have, for example, a differential of, let's say 60 is our max, 0.060. And like you had mentioned before, 0.050, on the absolute is typically would be that's on the higher range. So it's going to have a higher flare potential. And the more flare potential you get, again, combined with the RG, is going to give you an earlier read and then more shape down lane. So the balls that have lower differential are going to have a tendency to flare less and stay on line longer and straighter. And then the balls that have the higher differentials are going to flare more, and then they're going to want to change direction more down lane.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you got length potential for RG, hook potential for differential. And then as far as the ASIM goes, I consider that to be like a fine tune. So if you have a ball that has a higher has any kind of intermediate differential, which would be like the Storm or Premier Line balls, like you mentioned, Absolute, or the new one that's coming out, the DNA. These balls that have the intermediate differential that's built in, they're going to want to stand up quicker. So they're going to see, when it sees friction, you're going to actually see it change direction faster.
So one of my
it kind of fine tunes the break point a little bit. So it's more of a fine tune. The numbers that matter the most are RG, and then differential, and then PSA in that order.
So I'm looking at one. So one of my favorites in the bag right now is an Infinite Physics. And I think it's the ball of the year. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of the ASIM solids, and I don't consider this one maybe a solid, but it came out of the box a little on the dollar side. But this is it's very smooth and predictable. So the specs 2.48, so it's not that bad. It's basically what the other one was.
Low,
But the lower one,
RG.
the differential is 0.53. So this is not like your gem. This is not like your gem or your you said TNT, or obviously, right?
Well, yeah. No, I would say core wise, if you're looking at numbers wise, even though it is you got to kind of classify them in some categories, So if you're looking at like differential, for example, anything above 45 differential, between 45 and 60, you could say that's high. That's high hook potentials. Anything in that category is high. So knowing that if you put the pin 4 inches from your PAP, you're going to get a lot of flare out of it, which means the ball is going to want to shape and want to change direction and want to kind of come off its line more. So you're going to see more change of direction, more performance.
So here's another one. So, and this is the I've always had this kind of a dilemma too. So I'm a big advocate, and I may be sounding like a total dope when I say this. So if I am, just let me know, and I'll accept my dopiness. But so for me, I've always done this, right? I like two layouts exclusively. Very simple. I'm like kind of like the Matt Gasson of the world. Pin above the bridge, CG out. Below the bridge, CG out.
Yeah.
So I kind of just use those, and I don't get too fancy with the numbers or whatnot. So is it, I don't want to say normal, but is it, I guess, normal to just kind of keep putting those layouts on balls and not really like venturing out too much? Like, does that make sense, or am I not getting the full? Okay.
If you're building an arsenal, that makes sense, because there's enough difference in and not just the core shapes, but the cover stocks, that if you did the same layout, and really you got to look at, take somebody like Pete Weber, for example. He's somebody who's a rev dominant type of a player with a lot of axis rotation, very little tilt, gets the ball through the heads easy, ball always read the mid lane and hooked on the back end. He almost always used pins between 5.5 and 6 inches from his PAP, with the center of gravity, swung out more towards it. Like he used either the pin above or the pin below, but near the center line of his grip. And that matches his game and his style. So if you, and a lot of people do make it too complicated in terms of, if you're willing to have an arsenal of balls and say you're going to have 9 balls in your arsenal, there's going to be, as long as you select the right arsenal, there's going to be enough variety in those balls that even with the exact same layout, you're going to see huge differences in performance. So there's no reason to then, the mistake most people do, if they do make a mistake, is they see a bowling ball that's designed, take like a high road, for example, and it has a higher RG, and they're afraid that the ball is going to go too long. So they drill it up with a layout that's going to try to make it pick up a little bit early. And then they go grab a DNA, and the DNA is going to be, now they're afraid this thing is going to hook real early and be real strong. So they go with a real weak layout. So now you're drilling strong balls with a weak layout, and then weaker balls with a strong layout. And then you end up with kind of a mishmash of stuff that's all sort of in the middle. If you go with, either one layout or 2 layouts, and you let the differences in what the balls were designed to do dictate what's going to happen on the lanes, now you're ahead of the game, because you're not overlapping by making, balls that hook early, trying to give them extra length, or balls that are designed to go down the lane, trying to make sure they don't skid too far. So it's, it's really best when you do build an arsenal properly. And this is what people struggle with all the time. And you go to a tournament, you shouldn't have a good look with every ball in your bag.
No.
I mean, you should have, right now, this is my ball here. Now when the lanes change, I got to change my angles and releases and stuff, and they transition. Now I got to go to this. And at any given point, you should really, if you're going to go there with 6 or 9 balls, you should only have one ball that's really, and then it's the right ball. Alex Hoskins just bowled a tournament up in Montana this last weekend, 3 different patterns. You know how many balls he brought? 6. That's it. He only, for 3 different patterns, which is about half as many as I would have brought, but he brought 6. He used all 6 of them, and he led the tournament by a lot, and he won on the step ladder and won the tournament. So, as long as you have your bases covered, okay, this is what I'm going to use when either the pattern's short, medium, or long, or if I'm trying to close it down or trying to open up the lane more, and you have, which ball is supposed to work when, you'll be fine. You don't need to have 14 different layouts.
No, and I like keeping it simple. Everybody, a lot of people have that misconception of, we got to do the numbers and the angle to be this and whatnot. I always thought it was just simpler just to put it, look, I like it up, kick it out. I like it down, kick it out. Like, I always thought, like, I'm not getting the full value of what the ball is or what the ball can do. But there are ones that are similar, right? So, like I was telling you earlier in the day, like, so I'm coming off an injury. So if we can see this here, I'm going to select. I'm going to select a couple out of the batch, and we're going to go drill this weekend. So
great.
All right. So, and look, I don't bowl on tour. I bowl on my leagues. I bowl some tournaments competitively, but I'm not Weber. I'm not you. I don't need all this fancy layouts and all this crap. I don't need all that. So I don't like big ASIMs, like snow tires, they call them, right? For me, in my game, they burn up a little bit too soon, and they don't have enough pop in the back. I kind of like the middle of the road stuff, like the high road line. The IQ line is always great. So let me ask you this. I always found a similarity between like an IQ tour and a phase 2, right?
Yep.
So
2 of my favorites.
They're fantastic. That's why they're still on the line, right? But how do you differentiate? Okay, I have one of each on the floor. Well, they're so similar. Do you just drill both? And then I go to this one. Well, I have an absolute on the floor, and I also want to drill an eternity. But they seem like they're pretty similar. So I don't like getting a ball that's that close, and you know what I mean? So how do you differentiate which one would be, or which one would be doing different things, basically?
Well, I would always try to go to number one, kind of what I was saying before, complement what the ball's designed to do.
Okay.
Right. So the absolute is going to have a little bit weaker cover, even though it has a strong core. The eternity is going to have a stronger cover stock and a strong core. So the eternity might be one that you actually put the pin up in whatever distance from your axis it ends up being. But let's just say it's 5 inches. You put a 5-inch pin to pap, and you put that one above your fingers. On the absolute, you put the pin below your fingers. And now you've got a pretty good difference between those 2 particular balls when you need to have something that's an ASIM, whether it's something that's a little cleaner ASIM or one that's going to be a little bit stronger ASIM. So the other thing too would be, you're looking at trying to establish some spots in your arsenal. Like, do you have your ball that would be the weakest for late in the day when the lanes are as dry and broken down as they can be, and versus something when they're super, super fresh, and then you're trying to establish some ones in between. what sounds to me like is you're getting struggling a little bit with trying to say, okay, I got 2, 3, 4 balls. How close together are they? Which is, sounds like you've also going to like fill in some gaps, you know, and when you're filling the gaps, it's okay for specific scenarios, but it's not really part of like building a wide arsenal, where if you're going to go to a tournament, you have no idea what you're going to be bowling on or what's going to work. You don't want to bring 2 balls that are, you know, only a board with your feet different, for example, you know.
First question of the night coming from the Tapster. We love Charlie Tap.
Hey, we love Charlie Tap.
We love Charlie Tap. Steve, do you find the older you get, the more symmetrical equipment you tend to use?
Now, I would say that I do have a tendency to use a lot more symmetrical than I do ASIMs, you know, and that's probably some of that is basically like launch angle, you know, like as we get older, I guess you should say we're probably our lines are a little bit straighter because we don't have the same rev rate we used to have or the same axis rotation. So as that happens, as you do have a tendency to keep maybe the ball in front of you a little bit, that, yeah, you would say, you know what, I'm probably going to find that, and then maybe that's why I use the phase 2 so much. I never go to a tournament without the phase 2. And almost every single tournament I've bowled, I end up using that ball at some point, if not even for the whole tournament. And basically, if you do have, you know, the stronger types of ASIMs, most of them do hook quite a bit. Now, the absolute gets down the lane nice because it was designed for that. But a lot of the other ASIMs you're going to use when you're trying to create more shape. And but if you're trying to open up your angles too much, more than really your game allows you to, then it's going to have a hard time getting the ball to shape back and kind of go through the pins the right way. So yeah, I would say that I find myself using symmetricals more than I used to.
So one of my, I call it like my get out of jail free card. And it's, yeah, I think everybody has a ball where it's just like, I can put it in my hand. I know what it's going to do. And you're safe. Like no matter where you're on. Right. So for me, I always found my dark codes. I had several of those. Were always my get out of jail free cards. So can we compare? Is there a comparison between like an absolute, the eternity? I mean, are they similar to what a dark code was, or more ball, less ball? I mean, I love the cover on the dark code, and probably why I like the infant physics, the same cover, right? So, are they similar? Like, what can we compare it to?
Yeah, no, I would say similar. And I would say if you're trying to look at, say, performance-wise, you know, for cover stocks, the Eternity would be a good one to choose from as far as some of the other, you know, more recent releases. And honestly, a ball that was really good that didn't get a ton of eyeballs on it that might fall in that same kind of lines. It may be a touch cleaner, but the reality check was also a really good one.
Fantastic bowling ball.
Yeah, really good one. And that's it. And then that's a really good option as well, too. You know, as far as in the storm line goes, I mean, for me, I still use my Infinite quite a bit. I use the Proton on the heavier patterns, you know, which now, you know, you'd really be looking at more of the DNA when you're looking for those kinds of balls, which is along the same lines as with the Gem as well, you know, with all the very low RG, the very high differential, the strong intermediate. And then, you know, if you're looking to create a little bit more shape down lane, but still have that strong motion. I don't know. I mean, that exotic Gem is an awfully good. I know Matt Gasson, you talked about him earlier.
Yeah,
he is a huge fan, and on certain conditions, and that ball is just fantastic. And I think the Eternity is going to be right there in that same kind of category. And then know that the DNA is going to be a step up, and the Absolute is a step down.
Okay, so here's another one for you. And again, I guess I'm like the anti 21st century bowler, and I never really use pads a lot, right? So I found myself now when I would drill a piece, you know, it comes out of Utah. Sometimes it's too glossed up, and I have to break the shell and just hit it with a pad, like a light pad. So how do you figure out, like, and I kind of understand it, but I want to learn more. So what's the right one to start with? Like, what's the right number pad to start with? Like, how do you know when you have to break it? What's the right one to do it and go on from there? Like, everybody has their pads in their bag. That's the new trend, right? So how do you figure out, like, what's the good starting point and when you need to hit it with a pad?
Yeah, the one, I don't know if you're going to like this answer, Mike, but I'm going to give it to you anyways, which
Go
is
for it.
Surface and surface adjustments. It really is an art, and it's not specifically a science. And the reason for that is because, one, the pads change dramatically and quickly. You know, we did a video recently on our Storm channel, and it had Frankie, Francois Lavoie. He was adjusting the surface on his Absolute, and he had on his 1000 pad, he had like 1410 grit, you know, because he'd used it twice. Like it takes and smooths it out. And what matters so much is the amount of pressure and the amount of time. And there's really no way to get to know exactly what the right ones are for you until you get in there and do it a little bit. I would say the one thing most people do have a tendency of doing is they don't use enough surface.
Wow.
Very, very rarely do you see people that it's like, man, their ball's just way too dull. I see so many more people err on the side of the ball's not dull enough. It's not picking up and reading. It's not getting into a good enough roll, and it's not reading the mid lane well enough. And then it causes, you know, poor ball reaction, basically. So I like to, you know, for my urethanes, I almost always, whether it's a pitch black or a Zen U, I'll use a 500 pad, sometimes a 360. But usually for the reactives, I'll hit it with 1000 to start. And then if it's a little bit too much, then I'll hit it with a fresh 2000. But if you're looking at the surface roughness numbers, there's almost no use even really for a 3000 or 4000 pad. I mean, it doesn't do hardly anything to the surface, you know. So really 1 and 2000 for reactives and 500s for your urethanes are the must. Yeah.
So then what? So now going back to your new urethane piece, your Zen U, you just mentioned it, right?
Yeah.
And everybody says the Zen U it's special. So
yes,
and I've just started finally, you know, becoming a more modern bowler, adding urethane to the bag. So what makes that stand out more than like a UC3 or a pitch black or a pitch blue and all the other pitches? So what is different between the Zen U and Storm's other urethane pieces they have?
Well, the nice thing with the Zen U is in all of our analysis and all of our testing, it really fits in just perfectly in between the pitch black and the UC3. So the Zen U is just, you know, depending on how many, you know, for me, it's about 2 to 3 boards difference. As far as with my feet, kind of throwing it at the same break point. So my UC3 will be the strongest of the urethanes. My pitch black will be the one when I want to play the straightest. And then the Zen U gives me just a little bit more angle to open up. So it really does fit nicely in between there. And that's what we, you know, have had in the past. Like you mentioned the other, like we had a pitch purple and we had a pitch blue, and there was a fever pitch that went down the lane pretty far. We've had some different pitches, but they were all ones that were just kind of a tweak of the urethane up from what the, you know, standard that we've been using for the pitch black for all these years. But, you know, the one thing is with pitch black, people get confused. They think it's just for like when lanes are dry or to play them straight, but really it's early. It's when you need a break point to be very, very, very early. And then something then ends up giving you a lot more control on the back end, which is a lot of times is hold. And, you know, we saw this trend where everybody was going back to urethanes on the world bowling scene many, many years ago. And that's when we developed the pitch black in 2013. And it's, you know, like I say, we're going on a decade now with it. It's been really good.
So here's another one. And I lost my train of thought, but I'm going to be an old man, Steve. I really am. Okay, I got it back. Sorry, I'll get back. So,
there you go.
Okay, got it. Senior moment, right? So,
yeah.
So
I'm
now
familiar.
you guys have all the brands. So you got Storm, you got Roto, you got Global, right? All underneath the umbrella.
That's right.
For going back, I'm going to use myself again, right? I've been throwing this stuff exclusively for a long time now, but I've always, and since you've acquired the Global brand, for me, I feel that in my game, the Global products roll better than the Storm stuff and rolls better than the Roto stuff. That's mine. And a lot of people say, well, there's similarities. Well, this rolls different. This rolls different. How are they different if they're all out of the same factory? They're all poured in the same place. But is that a myth that like the Storm stuff may be a little bit different than the Roto stuff and the Roto is a little bit different than the Global? Is that a myth or is that true somehow?
No, it's true. It's true. There's difference in what is the same is the process. You know, we don't have a different pouring area for the cover stocks or for the cores or for the weight blocks or the finishing area. They all go through the same processes, but the materials are different and also the designs are different. The design concepts, you know, if you look at the Zens and the Realities and the new Eternities, they're single density poured large weight block designs in a core. And they get, that may be something that matches up really good for you based off of the combination of, you know, what all goes into it with core and cover stock weight block design. But I mean, the Zen is the all-time most popular 900 global ball of all time. Yeah, we've sold more of those than any ball from 900 global ever. It's the most popular ever, and that's a real unique shape. You know, it's a single density. There's no flip block or slug or anything on there. It creates all its differential without that. So it's just through the unique weight block shape. So that may just be something that matches up. We're talking about like layouts. You know, there may be certain layouts that work good for your style. Same kind of thing can be true as well with the core designs. Like these concepts that are specific to the brands, that matches up best for you. So I use the Reality a ton myself, because that for me is an ASIM that I can use when I need something that still creates a little bit more shape down lane, because it doesn't read quite as early or as soon as say the Gem or the Proton does for me, or the DNA. So it's a little bit cleaner, but it doesn't give me as delayed of a breakpoint as some of the other either hybrids or pearls or something else with a little bit of polish on it.
So when we're talking about DNA and the newer stuff, right? So I have one of my favorite roto pieces ever on the floor in that stash I showed you is an unhinged. So
nice.
It's a little bit older. So
that is, yeah.
I loved it. So I have a blank one. I want to put holes in it. But now here's the question. Yeah. And a lot of people say, like, okay, the older the ball is, because the technology is kind of outdated, it won't perform as well as it did when it was released years ago. Is that entirely true? I mean, look at Simo. He throws he threw an alpha at the U.S. Open. He won the Masters throwing an uproar. So is that like myth, where, you know what I mean? Or does the old stuff still work on, today's technology with the lanes and the oils and whatnot?
The older equipment can still work today, but I will say, when you do look at bowling balls as they age, right, you're typically going to see in your reactive bowling balls, these bowling balls get harder. They lose performance over time. They don't gain performance.
Okay.
So as you would, whether it's drilled or undrilled, you're going to typically see, like I say, a ball that's, even if it's undrilled, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old or so. If you were to check the hardness originally and then check the hardness now, you would actually see a difference, and it would actually perform not quite as strong, because the lower the hardness, then the more performance you typically would see on the lane. So yeah, so I would say that is true, that you would see a little bit less in time. But in general, I mean, you look at the lane conditions now too. We see volumes of oil that are traditionally being used. I mean, one of the first tournaments I remember that ever hit 30 mils of oil was at the U.S. Open, when they had it in Texas, when it was in Dallas. And there was, I think, 33 or so mils of oil on the lane. And that was like the most, ever that we'd kind of sort of seen at the time. So as the volumes of oil have increased, it definitely has, you go back nowadays and you throw the shape that you used to get out of, you pick any ball, El Nino 2000, I used to, like the ball that I used 20 years ago that performed and hooked more than anything else. Now that doesn't give me that same factor, because there's that much more oil on the lane. And then also, the balls do lose some performance over time.
So drilling a ball that's like 5 or 6, 7 years old, it's not the worst thing in the world. You just have to know what to expect, basically.
Yeah, you just have to know that it's probably going to give you a little bit more length than what you maybe originally would have gotten if you had drilled it at the time versus where it is now. But it still has the same shape in it, the same weight block, same dynamics, same core shape. Weight block does, it's still all that stuff's the same. So you're still going to get that same roll pattern out of it. It's just going to be a little bit less overall performance.
So one of the best lines ever is the IQ line. And you guys have made the announcement, the IQ Ruby.
Yes,
that's
right.
Are we I read somewhere, and again, this is all the internet geniuses, and that's what they are. Internet. It's like, it's bowling Wikipedia, basically, right? So let's ask the expert. You're the expert. A couple people have said this is very comparable to an emerald. Is the Ruby going to be like an emerald? Because the emerald was supposed to be like the gold ball, which was nothing like the gold ball. So what do we expect out of the IQ Ruby? What have you seen so far?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of shape. So for me, I've seen more performance. It hooks earlier for me than the Emerald and then the IQ Tour Gold. The Gold Pearl one was one that just floated down the lane forever. I remember Pete Weber winning the Tournament of Champions with it against Belmonte. And I mean, he was floating that thing. It just glided down the lane, you know. So there is some differences. I mean, it's not a huge difference like Arrow's difference, but when you're looking at the different types of micas and the dyes and the different changes that you see to the bowling balls, even though it is a pearl cover stock and it's got the polished finish, it's got the same core, you are going to see those different performances characteristics out of the different balls. So I would say for you, I would expect from what you saw out of your emerald, it'd probably be closer to your emerald than it was the gold ball. But again, these are, you know, for a skilled, a talented player that's going to see these kind of differences, not your average
league guy,
you know, average league guy that's going to, you know, if he's looking for, he's not going to, you know, be able to tell or see those kind of fine differences. But yeah, you can expect a little bit more performance than you would, but you would still use it in that same category. You know, when do I want a ball that's going to rev up early, but not flare a lot, you know, kind of keep it on line, but have it rev up early. And that's what the IQ has made that ball so special all these years.
So when you talked about like different, like the micas and whatnot and the materials, is this a myth too? And I feel I'm so like happy. I'm going to ask all these questions that I've thought of for all these years. I'm finally going to ask somebody with a brain in their head. Does the color of the ball affect the roll of the ball? And this is what I mean by this. And I know this is going to sound really crazy. A black U dot rolled great. A black hammer rolled great. A black thunder was a phenomenal bowling ball. Rolled great. A black solid bowling ball, the danger zone, right? I'm going to go older stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They all rolled like solid black bowling ball for some reason always rolled great. Is that true? Where if the ball, like a black ball or one solid color, like without mixing it, that affects the way the ball rolls too, or is that just a myth?
I don't know that I would say it affects it in a positive way where you'd be like, well, if it's a one color, it's going to perform the best. If it's two or three, it's not going to be as good. The one thing you will see that is a difference is that the colors do affect the performance of the ball.
Okay.
So there used to be a bigger difference. So let me just kind of go back a ways. So, and I'm going back a long ways to the early days of Storm, and we just did a limited edition re-release of it, but the Yellow Sunstorm.
I have two of those on the floor, by the way.
Do you? Yeah.
I do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the original one, we actually weren't able to make it have the exact same cover stock as what the original one had because there actually had been changes in the federal regulations on what you could have for, there was a certain component to that yellow dye that we had used in the original Suns. That product's no longer available.
Okay.
You can't get it anymore. So there's, you know, the people I think are familiar with solids and hybrids and pearls, and the pearl balls have a mica in there, which is like a very small metallic flake, right? And then the solids are ones that just have a dye that is either a liquid or a powder, but it gets mixed in with the cover stock, but there's no mica in it. Or then there's the hybrid, which could be, you know, one pearl and one solid. But you would see the differences, and you can see, and we have seen the differences, especially in the solids, more so between, because if you add the material to there, and when you're adding a different type of a dye to the actual cover stock material, you're going to affect that material, and you're specifically not only just the hardness, but really just like the rate of the oil absorption. So you depend on how much you add and what type you add to it, you can make it absorb oil faster or slower. And a lot of times that will be differences that you see in different cover stocks. So, so you absolutely can not, like if black was the answer. Now I will say they've had some good longevity for us, you know, whether you're looking at pitch blacks or IQ Tours is kind of officially a navy, but it's really kind of a black as well too. But we definitely have a good history of that.
So we have 5 more minutes. Let's have a little fun really quick, shall we?
Yeah.
We
got a lot of stuff to talk about too, actually. I don't know if we're going to squeeze this in 5 minutes.
I'm hoping you come back on another time. We can do this again some other time.
Yeah.
You have to make a tournament, not even a tournament bag, a bag. 6 balls minus your flame, because I believe you still have your purple flame, right?
I do, still, yes.
5 balls all time from Storm. What are you putting in your bag minus the flame? Go.
Oh, X Factor.
Ooh,
X Factor.
That's a great piece.
X Factor is my number one favorite ball. If anybody asks me of all time, it's the ball I used. I won the Eagle in Knoxville, and I bowled great with it. A lot of other tournaments, super versatile.
Fantastic. It smelled great too.
Yep. Pitch black, because you have to have, on the short patterns and bowling at the South Point a lot, like I do, you got to have a urethane ball in your bag, and the pitch black has been really one of my favorites. The original Lightning Storm, I'm going to say too, is number
one,
3.
Right?
The purple one had a super thick shell on it. Yep. It was a medium low RG and had a differential in the 30s. So it was kind of similar, actually, numbers wise, a little higher RG, but not too far off from the IQ Tour. So that one would definitely be in there as well too. So if we're looking at, did you say my flame counted or didn't count?
Oh, take the flame out of the bag. So you got to put 5. The flame's the spare bowl. So we're not
the
going to
flames there. Okay. So I've got my X Factor, and I've got my Lightning, and I've got the pitch black. So I'm all there. So hey, John Spence. Nice. Hi, John. So if I'm going to add on to that, I got to tell you too, it'd be awfully hard for me to go without the La Nina. You remember the La Nina?
The blue one. That was a good one too.
Yes. It had a very strong cover stock. It was basically Storm's first particle.
That was the particle ball, right?
That we had. Yeah. So that one was just amazing. And then lastly, the ball, which I still use now, and I've been using ever since I used it
phase 2
at the Masters. Yeah. Phase 2. I just can't not have that one. So that'd be my 5.
What do we have to do to get the Blue Thunder remade?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah. What do we have to do? That's a good question.
Well, the Black Thunder was a phenomenal piece too, and then that kind of went with the Lightning, right?
It was same time. Yeah, Thunder and Lightning was together.
And then the Blue Thunder was just fantastic.
Yeah, 5 was tough because I'm telling you, Virtual Gravity, the original, and the High Road. So I mean, you're limiting me to 5, but I could easily go. I could expand that out. But yeah, we've had some really good ones over.
What's the best part of your job, Steve? What's the best part of a bowling lifer like you are working for the #1 company in the industry? What is the best part of your job, day in and day out?
I would say R&D.
Besides talking to people like me, what is the best part of your job?
Yeah, R&D. I love talking to you, Mike, but I also love going down and testing out and seeing what it does for me on the lanes, the adjustments with new cover stocks and new core shapes, and getting to evaluate and see that and be a part of the product development process. Yeah, I absolutely love it. It's still fun. I still get super excited when I get, maybe Alex Hoskins, or he has some test balls for me to drill, or maybe Hank Boomershine has a new weight block that he designed. He said, hey, I want you to try this. Go out there, see what this does. And I kind of get to compare it and see and evaluate it and see what it does. I always get excited that first shot I throw as it goes down the lane. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Like a kid on Christmas
I love
morning,
it.
Right?
I love it. Yeah, it is. It's great. It's great.
So now I have to ask, so what do I have to do to come visit the plant finally? Well, McNeil promised me a visit, then COVID happened. We kind of fell off the wagon. So what do I have to do? Who do I have to talk to make this? Because I think it would be like a kid going to Willy Wonka's candy factory, right?
Yeah.
How do I get to tour the factory? What do I have to do? We talk about this off the air, maybe. Like,
I
would love to come.
You've got the right guy here in front of you. So, yeah, we'll figure out a time, and you just got to get yourself up here to Utah, get into Salt Lake City, and we're about an hour north of the airport, and then book some time here, and I can show you around, show you everything. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. That would be great.
I can't thank you enough for the hour. I hope that we'd love to have you back. I'd love to have you back and sit and maybe just talk bowling.
Yeah. We never got into Coach K scholarship or the Storm Utah Open. We've got a new Coach K scholarship. There's a new tournament. We have this fall where it's going to be the first ever championship bowling with Chayton Peterson. He does our videos at Storm. He had a first tournament there. He did our live streaming at the Storm Utah Open. And so he's going to host a tournament down there at the Gold Coast in October, the last weekend in October. And it's going to be the Coach K Scholarship Open. The championship bowling is going to be running it. So Chayton's going to be running that tournament. And it's going to be great exposure. I think a lot of people there's a lot of people in the Northwest know of the scholarship. I started it in 2010. I sell raffle tickets. I buy $1 and $5 at a time in donations from some past alumnus that have really helped, and people donate merchandise. But we've been able to give back $60,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So it's great. So we're excited about this tournament, and anybody that I've got some merchandise. I still have some backpacks and hats and some stainless steel water bottles. You make a donation. I've got a Bitly, just a Bitly account, Bitly/Coach K Scholarship. You just search it there, and it takes you right to my page. And you can also message me on Facebook as well too. I've got a Coach K Scholarship page on there, and anybody that's interested in just supporting the scholarship, it's been
I would love to help you out if you need any assistance. I would love to make a trip out west to help you out for your tournament.
That'd be great.
Anything to get out of New Jersey for a couple of days.
Hey, nobody needs too big of an excuse to get to Vegas, right?
Exactly.
So you get down to Gold Coast and in Vegas in October is a great time of the year too.
Will you be at the USBC convention this year?
I will. I'll be there.
I will also be there.
Will you? Let's meet up.
Definitely.
I'll be there. They moved it from New Orleans to the South Point this year for the first time, and I will be there. I'll be in there. So yeah,
we will definitely connect then. But I can't thank you enough. I will love to have you back, and maybe next time we will have maybe another Mega Buck celebrity come and tell some more stories.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, I only gave you my one, Derek Banks. I want to get that video digitized and see a 20-year-old version of me bowling for $132,000 for first, and I think it was $65,000 for second.
That's
incredible. I think it was and just kind of because as far as I know, this is the only copy on the planet. I mean, this is 1990. This is way before. I mean, there was no, if there wasn't somebody there shooting, with cameras to cover it like they did for the high roller for some of those tournaments that they had on ESPN. I mean, I don't think there's any other place that would have this video. So I'm looking forward. I'll let you know if I get that and get that thing uploaded so people can watch it. Yeah.
Steve, thank you so much. I will definitely reach out before convention. We will definitely do coffee or something at South Point. I look forward to physically meeting you and shaking your hand and shooting the shit for a little bit, put it politely. But I'll love to have you back if you want to come back and talk again anytime you want. Coach K Scholarship, look it up. Support the cause. Give back to the game that's given. That gave this man everything. I mean, he does everything for the sport. Support us. Support the kids. Obviously, Storm Utah Open. That's in January, right?
Yep, it's always whatever MLK holiday weekend is.
Okay.
If MLK holiday's on, which is always on a Monday, right? Our tournament runs the Friday, Saturday, Sunday before that, so it's always the same weekend every year.
And talking to Steve before we went on, if you want to bowl in something that's challenging, where 200 is a good score,
yes,
this is the tournament to go fly to bowl.
Yep, 3 games, and there was only one squad of the 10 that it took 600 to make the cut for 1 and 6.
So what's the format? It's a 3-game.
You bowl three games qualifying. You make it to Sunday if you advance 1 and 6.
Okay.
And out of those all those finalists, then they basically, you start back from scratch. Then you bowl 3 games, and then we cut in half eliminator style. Then you bowl 2 games, cut in half, and 1. And this year, Dallas Leong finished second. He was the tournament leader on Sunday, but he was the only person. We had 715 entries. He was the only person in the tournament that averaged 200.
That is incredible. And that was a Janowitz special, right?
John Janowitz has helped us for the last 15 years develop the oil pattern for the tournament. And this year coming up is going to be our 20th annual one. So it's kind of a little milestone tournament for us.
All right. So January. So MLK weekend is the week before my birthday. So next year I have to fly out for my birthday, pull out the little hair that I have left on my head, bowl, and then fly back to Jersey and ask myself what I did wrong for 6 games or 9 games, right?
Just make sure you bring your purple pearl flame or whatever spare ball you got, because that's the most important ball in your bag.
Well, do I drill one of those sport pieces up I have on a trophy case back there? I don't know.
Look at that. You got some good ones. Yes, you do. Soccer ball, basketball up there.
And there's the golf balls on the shelf below. So I have a couple pieces there. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm the junkie, Steve. I'm more like the bowling historian,
great,
and that's why I would love to sit. I know Mr. Chrisman bought that monster collection from that guy. I don't remember the guy's name.
He did.
Is that at headquarters? Is that where he has it displayed, or is it somewhere else?
No, it is at headquarters. It is not displayed though. He got the whole extension basically built onto the side next to our main offices.
Okay.
That's going to be the museum but he has to get all the cabinetry and everything has to get built in order to display it properly. But all of the collection is here in Brigham City. It's it's at Storm right now.
That's fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
You go. I know you got a lot of snow to shovel. You told me you're
cloudy. Man. So, hey, it's still coming down right now too. If you want to come help, I get you on a flight out here, Delta Fly direct right into
good.
Salt Lake, man.
I have a bad shoulder, a carpal tunnel. I got bad feet. No, I'm good. I don't like the white stuff. That I'm fine with that. But I can't thank you enough. We will touch base definitely before the convention. We'll do lunch or something. I can't wait to meet you. Everybody else, like and subscribe to the channel. Once again, thank you, Steve. Thank you for informing me on what diffs and RGs are and about surfaces and shells and all that good stuff. I cannot thank you enough. USBC Hall of Famer, Steve Klemkin, bowling legend, first ballot collegiate Hall of Famer, right there.
Thank you, man. I appreciate
you. Got
your
it, buddy. Steve, I'll talk to you soon. Everybody else will be back next Tuesday. I don't know what I'm going to be ranting about next Tuesday. Maybe we'll have another guest. Who knows? But until then, we will see you guys next Tuesday.